The morning the report arrived, Berlin was wrapped in a gray, metallic silence, the kind that always came before an air raid, or before the announcement of some new disaster from the collapsing front. But this morning the silence felt different. It felt heavy, like the air itself was bracing for the weight of what was about to be revealed. Inside the Führer bunker, the stale underground corridors hummed with low, anxious voices. Typewriters clicked in the distant administrative rooms. Guards marched with stiff, hollow precision. Every face carried the same exhausted dread. Every day brought new bad news, and every day they wondered how much more the Reich could take. In the map room, Adolf Hitler sat at the far end of the long oak conference table. His posture was rigid, his eyes red, rimmed from lack of sleep. He had been awake since before dawn, poring over casualty reports from the Eastern Front. Every number stabbed at him like a needle. Every red X across a division marker felt like a personal betrayal of the fate he had once been so certain belonged to him. Field Marshal Keitel entered first, followed by General Jodl, both men carrying the same tight-lipped expression, the look of soldiers who had seen the executioner's axe, but still had to kneel. "My Führer," Keitel said quietly. Hitler did not respond. His attention was fixed on the war map that showed Germany shrinking, its borders contracting as Allied armies crawled closer every week. "My Führer," Jodl repeated, a folder in his hands. "We have received new intelligence from the Abwehr about the United States." At that, Hitler finally lifted his head. Slowly, warily, "The Americans," he muttered. Yes, they build machines, they send supplies, they meddle. What now?" Another boast from Roosevelt. Keitel and Jodl exchanged a tense look. "My Führer," Jodl began, opening the folder. "This is confirmed. The United States has begun the full mobilization of its wartime army. Their target is 8 million men." The words dropped like stones in the room. Hitler blinked. For a moment, he seemed confused, not shocked, just confused, like the number didn't make sense to him, as though it were too large to fit inside human language. 8 million, he echoed. "Yes, my Führer," Jodl said. "Their selective service expansion, combined with industrial capacity, impossible," Hitler snapped. "The Americans are soft, lazy, they live in luxury, they lack discipline." Keitel quietly slid a stack of photographs across the table. Hitler hesitated, then finally snatched them up. What he saw inside those glossy prints made his jaw tighten. The images showed endless rows of barracks stretching across the American countryside. Photographs of training grounds that looked like entire cities of marching men. Factories churning out tanks, rifles, artillery, aircraft. Industrial leviathans capable of producing more in a single month than Germany could in an entire year. Hitler dropped the photographs like they were hot irons. "It is propaganda," he muttered. "Roosevelt inflates numbers to frighten Europe." "My Führer," Jodl whispered. "This information did not come from American declarations. It came from our own spies, and British intercepts confirm it." For several seconds, Hitler didn't move. Then he stood up so violently that his chair slammed against the wall. 8 million men, he shouted, his voice cracking with fury. "Do you think the German Reich is afraid of American rabble? They do not have the will to fight. They do not have the blood for it." His fist crashed against the table. "They think this war can be won by numbers. They think quantity will defeat quality." The generals said nothing. They had all seen the same trend. They had watched it unfold month after month. Quantity was winning. Quantity was crushing them. Factories were now more powerful than generals. Hitler paced the room like a caged wolf, muttering curses under his breath, shaking his head violently as if trying to shake away the number that refused to leave him. 8,000,000, 8,000,000, 8,000,000. He turned sharply toward Cadel. Summon Goebbels, he barked. We will counter this with propaganda. We will tell the German people that America is desperate, that they raise such numbers because they fear us. Catel nodded stiffly. Jawohl, my Führer. But Hitler's eyes had a distant, haunted look, one the generals had not seen before. Goebbels arrived minutes later, breathless, carrying writing pads under his arm. My Führer, I came as soon as I heard. Hitler thrust the intelligence folder at him. Raid. Goebbels skimmed a few pages. Even his usually animated face paled. 8,000,000, he whispered. This will terrify the people. It must not. Hitler snapped. You must twist it, break it. If the people lose faith, if the Wehrmacht loses faith, everything collapses. Goebbels nodded, but very slowly. We can portray the Americans as panicked. We can say Roosevelt fears our final victory. We can say they are sending untrained, untested men. Farm boys, clerks, immigrants who don't know what they fight for. Hitler gripped the table. Do it. Tomorrow, everywhere, radio, posters, newsreels. Goebbels hesitated. My Führer, what do you think, truly? Hitler's eyes flickered with something dark, I think. He whispered that America seeks to drown Germany under weight alone, that they cannot defeat us in spirit, so they will attempt to bury us in flesh. Goebbels said nothing. Hitler added, nearly to himself, but 8,000,000 men, 8,000,000. He didn't finish the sentence. The news began spreading quietly through military circles, then through civilians, then through Berlin itself. No one announced it. No official bulletin confirmed it. But rumors moved faster than truth. In America, they are training millions. They say their factories never stop. They say our Führer is furious. Some say he's worried. People whispered these things while standing in line for bread, while huddled in basements during air raids, while sweeping glass from bomb-shattered windows. The whispers grew louder each day, forming a cloud of dread that hung over Berlin like an approaching storm. And every night, the air raid sirens wailed as Allied bombers swept in like steel crows. Inside the bunker, Hitler's temper grew more unstable with each passing hour. He exploded at officers for minor errors, threw pencils at maps, and tore reports in half. But beneath the rage, there was something worse. Silence. Moments where he simply stared at the wall, unmoving, unblinking. A mind wrestling with a truth it could not accept. Days later, Guderian arrived with updates from the Western Front. My Führer, he said, tapping the map with a wooden pointer. American reinforcements are arriving at ports faster than we can track. They move with astonishing speed and precision. Hitler narrowed his eyes. Because they have no weaknesses, no shortages, the oceans shield them, their factories overflow. Guderian nodded grimly. By spring, they may field 3 times the armored divisions we have left. They will not break the German line, Hitler insisted. Guderian frowned. My Führer, they already have. Silence, cold, crushing, complete. That night, Hitler returned to the same old map from 1939, the one that once showed a Germany on the rise, a Europe trembling before him. He placed his hand on it. Back then, he thought history belonged to him. Back then, he thought destiny was his servant. Back then, he thought America would never awaken. Now the giant was awake and marching toward him. 8 million, he whispered again, the number echoing in the darkness of the bunker. 8 million soldiers, his voice cracked. America will turn this war into a furnace. More days passed. More fronts collapsed. The generals tried to hide the truth, but truth always finds its way through the cracks. Across Germany, morale eroded like sand under waves. The Americans were coming, not in thousands, not in hundreds of thousands, but in millions. From the Rhine to the Oder, from the Alps to the Ardennes, every soldier whispered it. Some tried to stay brave. Some drank themselves numb. Some prayed. Some cursed Hitler's name under their breath. But none could deny the simple, catastrophic reality. No matter how brave a soldier was, bravery could not stop an ocean. The day Hitler finally admitted the truth silently, only to himself, came during a briefing with Dönitz. My Führer, Dönitz said, our submarines cannot stem the flow of troops. Their convoys are too numerous. Their air coverage is too strong. Hitler clenched his jaw. With respect, Dönitz added quietly, no fleet in history could stop what is coming. Hitler stared at him for a long time, and in that moment, something inside him broke. It was not loud, not dramatic, not theatrical, just a small, silent fracture. A realization that the war he wanted was no longer the war being fought. You may go, Hitler said, voice hollow. Dönitz saluted and left. Hitler remained alone. The map room was still. The lights buzzed. The air felt suffocating. He sank into his chair. He whispered, so this is how empires fall, not by defeat, but by exhaustion. The last act unfolded quickly. American forces surged across Europe, their numbers swelling every month. Their production reached heights the world had never imagined. Their generals adapted fast. Their troops fought with relentless momentum, and behind them, behind every division, every tank, every bomber, stood the weight of 8 million men. Germany staggered, then crumbled, then fell. In the final week, Berlin was a carcass of smoke and ruin. Artillery thundered like the heartbeat of doom. The Soviets closed in from the east. The Americans and British approached from the west. Buildings toppled. Fires raged. Civilians fled like shadows through the rubble. And deep underground, Hitler received the final intelligence report regarding the American mobilization. He held the paper for a long time. Then he laughed, not joyfully, not defiantly, not even bitterly. It was the laugh of a man who finally understood the scale of what he had unleashed and the impossibility of escaping it. So, he whispered, staring at the crumbling ceiling, the Americans truly built their 8 million. He closed his eyes. This war was never meant to be won. Above ground, the world continued to burn. Below ground, a single man confronted the truth that had haunted him since the first report arrived. A giant had awakened, and the Reich had been crushed beneath its footsteps. The news reached the Reich Chancellery just after dawn, carried by a courier who had ridden through the night, his motorcycle streaked with mud, his gloves stiff from the winter air squeezing through the forests of East Prussia. The gray, uniformed guards let him pass with unusual urgency. His orders were sealed with the double eagle stamp of the WWII. By the time he reached the long marble corridor outside the Führer's study, he was trembling not from fear alone, but from the weight of what he carried. Inside the room, Adolf Hitler hovered over a spread of maps, his face cast in the yellow glow of the chandelier above him. He had slept barely 3 hours, but that had become routine since the summer of 1941. Battles stretched across 2,000 miles of broken terrain. The war he once believed would be short and decisive had turned into something monstrous, something he could no longer bend to his will simply by shouting at generals or waving his hands over maps. Like a conductor controlling an orchestra, General Jodl was speaking softly when the courier burst in. Mein Führer, Jodl said, irritation twisting into alarm. This man insists the information is classified at the highest level. Hitler lifted his head slowly, eyes narrowing. Then give it to me. The courier stepped forward, saluted sharply, and handed over the sealed document. Hitler tore it open without ceremony. For a long moment he said nothing. The only sound was the faint hum of distant generators and the winter wind brushing against the window panes. Then he read it again, and again before his hands went cold. America, according to intelligence intercepted from multiple sources, had initiated what Roosevelt called a National Army Expansion Program. It was not a matter of a few new divisions or some limited mobilization. The United States of America, still months before entering the war, officially was preparing to raise, train, equip, and deploy an army of 8 million men. Hitler's jaw clenched so sharply that Jodl thought something cracked. 8 million, he whispered, though it was not truly a question. It was disbelief, coated with dread and rage in equal measure. 8 million Americans under arms. The courier nodded. The reports are confirmed, Mein Führer. For several seconds, Hitler stared at the paper, as if it were some kind of personal insult, something directed at him, rather than strategic consequence of the war. He laid it down slowly on his desk, palms pressing against the wood, as if steadying himself. Then he spoke quietly at first. So, Roosevelt thinks he can drown Europe with numbers. He muttered. He believes industry alone wins wars. The Americans build refrigerators and automobiles and imagine this makes them warriors. But they have no spirit, no understanding of struggle. But even as he said it, the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Jodl noticed, so did Cadel, and so did the courier, though he kept his eyes lowered. Hitler straightened, pacing toward the large map that covered the far wall Europe, North Africa, the Atlantic. His voice grew louder, sharper, as though he were trying to drown out reality. This is impossible. They cannot raise such a force. They do not have the officers, the training facilities, the logistical discipline. America is a land of consumers, not soldiers. Yet everyone in the room knew that Hitler understood the truth. America's industry was beyond anything the Reich could even dream of matching. And with the British still fighting, the Soviets absorbing divisions like a sponge, and the Mediterranean stretching his supply lines thin, the prospect of millions of fresh American soldiers entering the war was not just a threat. It was a death sentence. Still, Hitler's pride would not permit silence. He turned, jabbing a finger toward the map. If America enters this war with 8 million men, then the world will face something it has never seen, not because they are brave or skillful, but because they have steel, fuel, factories, and endless space to hide their industry. His tone grew harsher, angrier. Germany must end this war before they arrive. We must crush the Soviets, force Britain to her knees, and fortify Europe so deeply that no American army can ever cross the Atlantic. Jodl exchanged a glance with Cadel. It was not the first time Hitler had spoken of crushing the Soviets quickly. It had been his obsession since Operation Barbarossa began, but winter was approaching. The kind of winter that swallowed entire armies, drank their blood, and left only bones in the snow. Mein Führer, Jodl began carefully. Our forces are already stretched, Hitler barked. Then we stretch them further. We push them harder. The Red Army is on its knees. One more offensive, one more decisive strike, and the entire rotten structure collapses. But as he paced, the words he had read echoed in his mind. 8 million. It was a number that broke through his delusions like a hammer striking glass. He marched back to his desk and read the document a fourth time, as though hoping the number might change. It did not. He slammed the folder shut. This war must be won before America shows its teeth. Once their factories are fully awakened, they will produce planes faster than we can shoot them down, ships faster than we can sink them, and men faster than we can bury them. There was a stillness in the room, a cold, heavy silence that wrapped itself around everyone present. General Cadle spoke softly. "What shall we do, mein Führer? What shall we do?" Hitler repeated, his voice shaking with fury. "We do what we have always done. We take the initiative. We attack. We break their allies before they can unite with them." But Jodl, daring for once to speak plainly, said, "The Americans are already united. Their industry is awake. Their people are mobilizing. Their navy is preparing. Even if we defeat the Soviets, an American army of 8 million men will never set foot in Europe." Hitler snapped, "Not while I live," but deep inside he was not sure. Hours later, after the generals had left and the corridors of the Chancellery were quiet, Hitler remained in his study. Outside, snow drifted between the lamps of the courtyard. He did not sit. He walked in circles, muttering to himself. Occasionally he would stop at the map, stare at the Eastern Front, then at the Atlantic, then at the United States, so far away, yet now suddenly so near. He thought of Roosevelt. He hated Roosevelt, hated his calm voice on the radio, his confident speeches, his way of turning political theater into moral crusade. Hitler believed Roosevelt had tricked America into preparing for war long before any German act could justify it. And now that preparation was no longer a rumor, it was fact, written in black ink on a sheet of paper resting on his desk like a ticking bomb. He whispered the number again. 8 million. He pictured wave after wave of American divisions marching across Europe, supported by ships as large as cities, bombers the size of steel whales, tanks rolling off assembly lines like toys stamped from metal. He imagined the Reich dwarfed not only by Soviet landmass and British naval reach, but by American industrial power, something he could not intimidate or outshout or frighten into submission. He gripped the edge of the desk until his knuckles whitened. "They will come," he said quietly, "with their factories, their money, their arrogance." He paused. "And if we fail to stop them, Europe will drown." But Hitler refused to picture defeat. He shoved the thought away violently. Instead, he imagined German victory in Russia, a victory so total it would force the world to its knees. He imagined the United States hesitating, calculating, perhaps even negotiating. If only he could deliver one great blow, one final crushing victory, before the United States completed its mobilization. In his mind, he still believed he controlled destiny. He still believed history bent to his will. He still believed Germany could win every war through force of personality and determination. But the truth, the cold, mathematical truth, was written in the production tables and manpower graphs on the desks of the American War Department. Numbers did not bow to speeches. By noon, word of America's mobilization had reached the upper ranks throughout Berlin. In the hallways of the Wehrmacht High Command, officers whispered anxiously, Some scoffed, insisting America was too far away, too inexperienced, too unprepared for a European war. Others were not so confident. They remembered how quickly America had raised armies in 1917, how swiftly their numbers had tipped the balance. Field Marshal von Rundstedt put it plainly to one colonel: "This war is now a race against time, and time may not be on our side." By the evening, Hitler summoned the senior leadership again: Goebbels, Goering, Himmler, Keitel, Jodl, and Bormann. He paced as they entered, muttering under his breath. When all were present, he turned sharply. "I want new offensives planned immediately, one in the south against the Soviets, one in North Africa if Rommel can manage it, and one against British shipping. We need victories, and we need them fast." Goebbels, sensing panic beneath the orders, asked carefully, "And the American threat?" Hitler glared at him. "The American threat exists only if we give them time to finish building that army. We must not give them that time." Goering, desperate to appear capable after months of Luftwaffe failures, pounded his fist against his chest. "Mein Führer, if America thinks it can challenge the Luftwaffe, they are fools. Give me the resources, and I will. You will do nothing," Hitler snapped. "Your Luftwaffe cannot even protect German cities from British bombers. Do not promise me victories you cannot deliver." Goering's face turned red. Himmler smirked quietly. Goebbels took notes with a trembling hand. Hitler continued pacing. "Our answer to America must be simple. We double production. We double conscription. We double every effort. We do not allow them to dictate the tempo of this war." But even as he spoke, he knew Germany could not match American production. Their factories were already strained. Their manpower pool was already shrinking. Still, he continued, "I want propaganda explaining that America is bluffing. Tell the German people that Roosevelt is inflating numbers to intimidate us." Goebbels nodded slowly. "Of course, mein Führer." But Hitler stopped and leaned toward him. "And privately, Joseph, privately, you will prepare the population for a long war, a total war, a war that may require sacrifices no nation has ever endured." Goebbels froze. He had never heard Hitler speak like that, not with fire, but with dread. "What are you saying?" Goebbels whispered. "I am saying," Hitler replied, "that if America truly fields 8 million men, this conflict may last years, many years." The room fell silent. No one dared to speak further. Later that night, as the last officials departed, Goebbels lingered in the foyer. Bormann approached him quietly. "You heard it," he murmured. "For the first time he admits it. The war is slipping from his fingers." Goebbels forced a bitter smile. "He will never admit that publicly. He will tell the German people that victory is certain even as the world falls on top of us." Bormann nodded grimly. "Then we must lie better than ever." Meanwhile, in Washington, factories roared day and night, shipyards hammered steel into hulls, and young men lined up at recruitment centers with determination and fear in equal measure. America was not simply building an army. It was awakening a giant that had slept through the early years of the conflict. When Roosevelt addressed the nation, he spoke plainly. "We shall raise a force so strong, so equipped, and so resolute that tyranny shall not stand before it." Hitler heard the broadcast through intercepted radio. He shut it off halfway through, but not before the words seared themselves into his memory. In the weeks that followed, Germany's situation worsened. The Eastern Front grew colder, the British bombings heavier, the U-boats less effective, the resources scarcer. Every day that passed, the American mobilization gained momentum. Every day that passed, the number 8 million grew from a threat into an approaching storm. And in the cold corridors of the Chancellery, Hitler repeated the same line again and again to his inner circle. America cannot win. America will not win. But deep inside, even he no longer believed it. Germany fought on. The Reich bled, city by city, division by division, winter after brutal winter. But the ocean could not hide the sound of American factories. The Atlantic could not stop the waves of troops that followed. And history could not bend to the will of one man forever. When the first massive American landings struck North Africa, Hitler flung a cup against the wall and shouted, "This is only the beginning. They think numbers are enough, but Germany will teach them. Germany will teach the world what determination means." But determination alone could not stop the tide. The 8 million men he feared were training, organizing, preparing. They were coming not all at once, not in a single wave, but in relentless force. And with them came tanks, ships, planes, and an industrial tempo Germany could never match. Hitler kept insisting the Reich would endure. Yet, as the war dragged on, he understood, piece by piece, that the nightmare he had hoped to avoid had already begun. He had started a war he could not finish, and the army he feared most, the one Roosevelt had promised, the one intelligence had warned him about, was marching closer every day. The storm he denied had grown into a hurricane, and by the time it reached Europe, nothing he said, no order he shouted, no delusion he clung to, could stop its arrival. Germany would learn, at last, what it meant to face a nation capable of raising 8 million soldiers. And Hitler would learn too late that numbers alone do not decide history, but sometimes they come close.